big glass facade. It is stupid.
It sounds like almost idiot-proof in a way.
And it comes to a point where it breaks together.
My mind is like...
The more technology you put into buildings, the more people get stressed. It is destroying our planet.
You won't need it.
If the client wants us to do that, then we have to cancel the contract.
Hi to all architecture lovers. As you know, sustainable architecture is receiving a lot of attention in the architecture world right now. Every self-respecting architect thinks about sustainability in their future buildings, in their projects. Today we are visiting Dag Schaffarczyk, the founder of Spreeplan, so here, who has designed his entire office and project so that not a single important detail is made from all kinds of synthetic materials. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Dag. We would like to ask some questions about sustainability architecture, and so I think we can start.
Obviously, the first question that every architect wonders, which I think you're the perfect person to ask, is what is sustainability in architecture? How are we sustainable? How can we be sustainable?
It's always a question of the definition. I mean, sustainability is in everybody's mouth. But if you ask 10 people what their definition about sustainability is, you do get 20 different answers. You can see very often that for especially the big companies, the big players in the construction branch use the word sustainability as a marketing slogan. So that means as long as there is no definition, you put the label sustainable on it and it sells better. As soon as it does, it's not sustainable anymore, because in my opinion, sustainability is a word that we don't need. It's more important to talk about circularity. So that means if you do everything, it doesn't have to be architecture or constructing or whatsoever. If you live and work in a circle, in a natural circle, then you're not destroying the planet. If you are pretty much into what I say, the linear capitalistic system, then it's linear, like I said, and it comes to a point where it breaks together. So to me, sustainability means using natural materials, working in a natural way, and not using anything or producing no garbage.
I think for me it will be also such a meaning of sustainability, and that's why I'm glad that you are here, such an expert of sustainability. That you was the first person I saw with the same opinion about sustainability as me.
Yeah.
What are the 5 most important aspects that architects should follow when they're creating a project to ensure it is sustainable?
5 is far too much. In my opinion, they're basically, yeah, 3, maybe 2 or 3. You have to use clean, in the best way, natural materials. If you work with compound materials, then it's always out of the natural circle. For example, everybody's talking about wood construction. Basically, these wood constructions which are glued together with chemical substances. And as soon as you use anything like this, you can't separate it anymore. And if you can't separate it, it's not back in the circle. So that means, like I said, very simple. Natural materials, clean, proper materials that you can divide after you use them, or even in the process you use them. That's one thing. And the other thing, which is, in my opinion, extremely important, which is in most of the sustainable projects or architecture are not used in the way they should be, I think, is the question of low tech. The more technology you put into buildings, the more people get stressed, the more energy you need. If you look to very primitive old farmhouses, they work. Usually most of the time they are cold in summer and hot in winter. They don't have any technical heating systems, no climate systems or whatsoever. And if you use the natural materials in the way they should be used, you don't need these technical extras. We said maybe 3 things, so we had 2. We were talking about the materials and where they come from and where they should go. We were talking about the technical infrastructure. And the third, and somehow most important, are the people that live in. Because I don't know why, but we have strange ideas of what we have to expect in a building. For example, if you go to places that could get very cold, like Russia or even here in Berlin, people expect heating systems in a flat that offer you 21 degree during the wintertime. What for? I mean, if it's cold, fine. Put a jacket on, do a few thick socks, and that's it. This is what our grandparents did. If you live like this and if you design the buildings like that, then you don't need that much technique. In my opinion, it's very important to look at yourself and ask yourself, is that really needed? I mean, until the 70s, the definition of the living room temperature was at 18. Now we have 21 degrees. It might sound just small amount of degrees, like 3 degrees, but count that on every building and you can see what it needs in energy. So we have the three things. We have the material, we have the low tech, and we have the people which are using the buildings.
It sounds like almost idiot-proof in a way, the way you describe it.
It is.
It's
It
really
is.
simple.
Yeah. I mean, if you are into discussions like that,
Yeah.
then people say the classical way of building. Say, wait a moment. What is classical way of building? Yeah, what we see here with concrete and glass and stuff. This is not classical. Classical is what we have built during the last 500 or 1,000 years. That is classical. What you are talking about is what we've been doing the last 60 or 80 years, which is, sorry, I'm not using the word, but what is it? It is destroying our planet. It's giving people bad illnesses in the rooms they live because the air is too dry and you have allergic and bacteria and all that stuff. And people do have the guts to tell me this is classical way of building and constructing.
But do you know what I'm wondering? Because Spreeplan is so unique in the way that you guys build and design, and you're obviously not the typical steel and concrete architecture studio, and you don't want to be, and I think that's really great. But how do you apply these methods in the architecture climate that we're in, where the mindset is that we have to build with concrete and with high tech and with all these things? How do you actually execute?
I've never been interested in what is mainstream or whatsoever. It's a question of a personal mindset. And to be honest, I'm extremely egoistic. To work and live in a space like this, it's so much better than in a place like that. Yeah, isn't it? I mean, it's very simple.
Yeah. Such a contrast.
Yeah. I mean, it's very simple. I learned carpenter. I had my own wood workshop and stuff like this. And when I started studying architecture, I was realizing very early that this is definitely not the way I want to build and not the way I want to live or to work in. So I organized my studies at that time in the 90s at the Technical University in Berlin. That was possible, very international. So I was studying in Rome, in Ottawa, London, New York, Santiago de Chile, Buenos Aires. Did I miss something? I don't think. And this is where you can have different cultures and you learn different techniques and you learn very fast that architecture basically, if it fits to the needs of the people, then you use the materials which are local and you use the natural materials. I mean, in Asia, they build different than they build in Alaska or in the Swiss mountains. If you start to understand what the local material does to people and to the building, then it's something that I think is very simple and very easy to learn. I mean, people did that for hundreds of years. It's not very, very difficult to transform that into urbanistic architecture too. Our main goal is to find, or better, 20 years we needed to find people that were our customers. For the last 10 years, people came to us because we do have a certain kind of an image. And if you're seriously interested in that, then you usually search for it. And through the internet, if you search very hard, you find us. And you find very few architectural offices or studios that work like that. So most of the time, people that are going to ask us if we can make the architectural work for them, they are in that kind of a mindset. This is just 0.001% or something like this, and until now it was enough to survive. But if somebody starts, even if we are designing in a, let's say, sustainable way, and the client says, I want to use styrofoam in this or that part, I'm just saying no, I don't do this. If the client wants us to do that, then we have to cancel the contract.
The most important thing in this way is that you're so strong to say no at this point.
Very often I'm told that I'm very strong. I'm not. I have an idea of what I want to do. And the thing is, there is no right in the wrong. If you're trying, maybe this is a very cliche example, but it fits. I mean, you know Potemkinsche Dörfer. If you make a steel concrete skeleton and you cover it in natural, sustainable wood, it's not sustainable. And it's basically the same thing the other way around. If you have something that is designed and built with natural materials, and then somebody is asking you to use styrofoam for the insulation or something like that, it doesn't fit. Yeah, you have two choices. You have two possibilities. You can say yes to get the money, or you can say no. I don't care about money. I need something to eat. I need a place to live and to work, which I have. Maybe I'm the only CEO of an architectural studio that doesn't earn anything. I'm just working here. As architects, we know that it is very fashionable at the moment to have big glass facades, or even if you build houses somewhere in the rural areas, people want to have big glass facades. It is stupid. In terms of climate change, it's getting hotter and hotter. And I don't have to explain somebody what happens if you have big glass facades. I mean, it's as simple as 1, 2, 3, yeah? What do we have to do to protect ourselves for being in a boiling flat, yeah? With big glass facades, we cover it. I mean, how stupid do you have to be? Make a big glass facade or big windows to cover it that it's not getting too hot. You know what the very simple explanation would be? Use smaller windows.
Yeah.
Like you see in old farmhouses everywhere. These people knew that a window is a window with a certain aim, and it's not something that is fashionable.
It's a wall now. You don't get it's the wall.
I'm laughing right now because we have a project in our university right now, and we put just like a glass facade on it, and
but don't say that. It's like only parts of it.
Okay, it was a part. Really, it was only a little part of it, but it was like a style of our building.
But we're learning.
We were criticized by that.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously.
I'm a very big admirer of this guy who has designed this Einfach Bauen project, simply building, Florian Nagler. And if you see that these people made really very detailed models of how much window area would fit to living spaces and everything, then you see it's about around 11% or something like this. And this is a very proper way of designing it, and it's very simple. We have houses with big windows too, sometimes of course. But you have to know that the bigger the windows are, the more material you need, and the more you need to get the area in a climate, especially in summer, that is livable. The other question is statics or structure. In my opinion, there's no proper reason to build skyscrapers. For that, you need modern construction like concrete or steel concrete. I have no idea if you can construct something like this with natural materials. I don't think, but I do not know exactly. The thing is that these buildings, they are prestige objects. Nobody really seriously wants to live or to work in these. They're big scales. If you want to design and construct buildings like that, I'm not the person to talk about it, because it's just not in my horizon or not in my work. If we're talking about constructions with 4, 5, 6 stories high, then it's easy to design that with wood, which happened for hundreds of years. It's easy to design that with clay. We can use not burnt clay, just dry clay. Since last year, we have the new DIN norm in Germany. And if you use clay bricks, they are 100% circular. For thousands of years, you can just make them wet and they get molded again. So these are the questions of constructing, like statics, or like you have to always be much more concerned about the climate. Where does the sun comes from? Where does it goes? Where's shadow and everything? And the other thing is using the right insulation. If we talk about insulation, most people think only about keeping the heat inside the building in wintertime, which is, in my opinion, that much of a problem. because we do not have any strong winters anymore. And the period where it's really getting cold is getting smaller and smaller. What is much more important in terms or in questions of insulation is protecting ourselves from the heat. We have higher temperatures during the summer. We have longer periods of high temperature. So the biggest quality of a good insulation is not keeping the warmth inside the building in winter, but keeping the warmth or the heat outside of the building in summer. And this is something no synthetic insulation can do. It's only possible with natural materials like straw, sheep wool, cork, hemp, and stuff like this.
Speaking about unburned clay, how can we protect it from water that comes inside, and with which types of materials?
Chalk. It's like what people did for the last hundreds of years. You have a wooden skeleton, Fachwerk is the word in German, and the inner layers are made out of clay, and then you put this kind of chalk, the white chalk on top of it, and then it protects it from the weather.
I feel like every time you say something, my mind is like...
Why? I mean,
I don't know.
I'm not telling you anything you do not know. Do I? I mean, everything I've been talking about is basic knowledge, isn't it?
No, it is. It's just...
It is, that's the point. And this is something that is, I mean, see, I'm 60 years old now, and I spent my whole life wondering what people think. Just keep it simple.
But for example, our professor in material science just kept the lecture about clay because he said just you won't need it.
But we had 3 lectures about concrete.
Yes, exactly.
And that just says everything.
It's funny. It's a funny thing that you say that, because my oldest son, against my advice, he started studying architecture in Potsdam, and he quit 2 weeks.
Against your advice, why?
What is it? No, seriously, I was never forcing my children to do anything. They could do whatever they wanted to do. But when he told me he wants to start architecture, I said, oh, don't do this. But he started, and 2 weeks before his master, he quit.
No way.
And it was basically this reason you're just telling me. He came home and said, I'm not able to stand that kind of, I'm not using the word anymore, because people like my professors keep telling me you don't need clay, it's not kind of a material, and I keep telling them I lived my whole life in buildings and flats which were made by clay, and I know what it means, so don't tell me that, which is obviously very good for your relationship to your professor.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah, so this is why he quit, and now he's doing something that is, in my opinion, much more sensible. He's learning a carpenter.
I was wondering, is there maybe any project that you can think of that you have not designed yourself that does apply those principles?
Yes, of course. There are not very much designing studios, but if we're talking about ZRS, which you might know, they've been designing a few of these kind of projects. One of their first projects, their breakthrough somehow, I think it was in Bangladesh or in Pakistan, where they constructed together with teachers and the children a clay bamboo school. So clay was taking the pressure, bamboo was used as you use steel and steel concrete construction, and they built with these people together a school, and this is nearly 30 years ago or 20 years ago, something like this. But this is a project that is kind of a pilot project or something like that. They do very interesting work in Berlin, in Europe and stuff like that, which is pretty much into this direction, which I think is circular.
So we now talked about the good projects, and maybe what is like the most like artificial or unsustainable that you think you can do as an architect basically in your project, like something you should avoid at all costs when you're trying to make something good?
Avoid of all costs. That's strange. What do you mean by that?
Something that would be so artificial and not circular and not based on the concepts that you've described to us, that would basically just kind of ruin the whole purpose in the end of being
Look around you, the 99.9% of architecture.
An example, it's the middle of Berlin. You can choose to say that it's completely not sustainable architecture.
Everything. You're asking me a question where the answer is of no interest for me.
Okay.
You know, that's the point. I mean, I'm much more interested in, for example, buildings like this here. This is more than 100 years old, and it's basically made by natural materials. No compound materials. And what we did in building this old roof is here, we only used natural materials like straw, like paper, clay, hemp.
This is Manuela's. This is my best one. It's her, is the one who makes all the art. There are all her works of art.
Great view from the window.
Manuela freezes all the time and everywhere, even if there is heating system in the wall and in the ceiling. There is always a heating blanket for her. This is the working chamber, always locked. And you push the food through every 12 hours. There is actually so much to talk about. The modeling material is clay, exactly the same clay as the corner. And the color is a swamp lime paint. It is exactly the same as these, except that pigments are mixed in. So it is pure lime, the plaster, and a lime color with pigments. And then everyone makes stuff out of it.
And the storage unit here is.
It's from my wife. Her parents were pharmacists. She makes everything, from building materials or found objects from nature. For example, she made a wall like this for a client. For the dining area, she put clay on the wall. And then here, this was the showpiece for the client. She put the meadow herbs on it.
Is that like glue?
Yes, exactly. The glue, and then that is really all clay here in the corner, but there is the earth underneath. The one I showed you that even inspired a company. You can get this as a wall covering. Now you can buy it. You can put it on the wall, and then you have your wild herbs or meadow herbs directly on the wall. Here you can also see all the digital files. For example, you can see the ceiling heating there. Here it is in the ceiling, plastered in clay. This is the entire extension. These are capillary tubes, and they are plastered in clay. This is a thermographic image. Do you see how it is in the wall? That's at the back, and otherwise the heat comes from the ceiling. Here you can see that we have reused the roof tiles, all the roof tiles.
I have no idea about the other prices. I only care about Ferrari. You ask these young architects, can you explain to me how you would build? I have no idea.